Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here at the Jack Joseph and Morton Mandel Humanities Center at Cuyahoga Community College. We get a round of applause, please. Thank you. Thanks for being here. My name is Matt Jordan. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Dean and Chair for Humanities here at Cuyahoga Community College. It is great to see so many Mandel scholars here as part of the Jack Joseph and Morton Mandel Scholars Academy, as well as a lot of members of the greater Cleveland community who are here, and of course our Weavers who you'll meet in just a moment. Thank you all for being here so much. It's so great to have everybody here tonight. I hope folks enjoyed the reception. Was that a good experience? Can I get maybe some? Okay, yeah. Very good, very good. And I do want to let you know, there will be, particularly for those of you who are here from the broader community, there are some desserts available for afterwards. I know that some of you got desserts in advance, and I'm not going to name any names, but there are desserts available afterwards. For the Mandel scholars, we'll be heading straight upstairs to room 240, so you can bypass the dessert table for now, but I promise there will be dessert later, unless I've been lied to. But Mandel scholars will head straight upstairs. Everybody else, please stick around for some desserts. I also want to mention that we are recording this session, so if you're interested, if this is something you want to share with folks later, there will be a recording available. And I want to encourage you, if you would like to share your experience tonight, whether during the event or immediately afterwards, on social media using the hashtag #WeavingCommunity, which you've probably seen on the screen behind me. Yes, right there. This is our second year in a row doing this event, and we're hoping it's not the last time. But a very exciting opportunity for us. As many of you know, the Mandel Scholars Academy is the flagship academic program that comes out of the Mandel Humanities Center here at Tri-C, and is built on three core values, or three pillars. Humanities, we're a humanities center after all, and we ask our students to take a series of classes where they engage with big questions about the human experience. Leadership, and also civic engagement. And an event like tonight's is really focused on those second and third pillars, as we seek to help our students become civic-minded leaders who have thought broadly and deeply about the human experience. It is no secret that we live in deeply divided times. There's a lot of divisiveness, a lot of tribalism in American culture today. And where this event came from, and I'm so grateful to our friends at Weave, the Social Fabric Project, through the Aspen Institute, for their enthusiasm for bringing people together across various kinds of cultural divides, thinking about questions, how do we live together as fellow citizens, as neighbors, as friends, in a pluralistic society like our own? That's the kind of challenge that generated tonight's event, and it's very gratifying to see so many folks here, especially the folks who didn't have to be here in order to stay in good standing with the Mandel program. So glad to have all of you here. And I'd like to hand things off now to my friend and colleague, Dan Moulthrop of the City Club of Cleveland.
Thank you, Dean. Hello, everybody. It is great to see all of you. My name's Dan Moulthrop. I am the CEO of the City Club of Cleveland. For 110 years, the City Club has been convening community conversation in the interest of just creating a stronger and better community. You hear us on the radio sometimes on Fridays at noon on WKSU. You might catch us on WVIZ on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock. The reason I'm here today is because of this kind of mission overlap with this project, Weave, the Social Fabric Project. What we do at the City Club is really about this very thing, of bringing people together for what we call conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. But as we're getting ready for this event tonight and for this conversation, I want to put a different kind of frame on it, and I haven't cleared this with anybody, so apologies in advance. But one of the questions we ask a lot in our work at the City Club is, what is democracy for? It's a lot of effort. And why do we do it? What is it actually for? What is this American experiment for? When it was first begun, there were a certain set of founding principles, right? And every generation, I think, has a responsibility to ask that question and then answer it for themselves. After the Civil War, we had to ask ourselves that question, and again, as we began different moments, every crisis required that we ask this question again. There's a friend of mine who I quote a lot. His name is Eric Liu, and I know you know exactly who he is. And he talks about the American experiment today as the project of that experiment is to create Earth's first mass, multiracial, multi-ethnic, truly inclusive democratic republic. Maybe that's what democracy is for. But we'll find out more. I mean, it's just a question to add into this mix right now. And now I'm going to hand it off to Frederick Riley. Frederick Riley is the executive director of WEAVE, the Social Impact, the Social Fabric Project. Did I say it right?
Perfect.
The Social Fabric Project of the Aspen Institute in Aspen, Colorado. Frederick has been running this since March of 2020, I think, which is a terrible time to take over a new job.
And move to a new city.
And move to a new city and then not meet anybody in that city. But he seems to have survived and thrived. Friends, Frederick Riley.
So, good evening. Okay, wait, hold on. So some of this is going to be participatory, and so if we can't even figure out a call and response, so good evening, and then you all say back. Good evening. Perfect. Okay, so there are going to be a couple times tonight in which we do that. So be on the edge of your seat, because if you don't reply back, I'm going to take pictures and names and faces. Okay. So Dean Jordan and Dan really did a really good job framing some of the issues that our country is plagued with right now. But I want to kind of simplify it a little bit. Have you ever been in a relationship with somebody and you didn't trust them? I want you to think about that for a second. Every time you see them, your antennas go up, you're standing over their shoulder, looking at them text on their cell phone, because the trust in your relationship is broken. And you are trying to figure out, what is this person doing, right? Here's the catch. This is where we are right now as a country, as a nation. We have broken trust. We don't trust our government, and we don't trust each other. We don't trust our neighbors, and we don't trust each other. How can you live in the same house with somebody that you don't trust? All the issues that they talked about, this deeply tattered social fabric, is all because trust is broken. And how do you rebuild trust? You do it by everybody joining into the fight to really help to get an understanding of what happened, and then also begin to work together to solve the issue. And that's what we can do in our neighborhoods right now if we're really interested in building trust. We're not going to have that from Washington, because Washington isn't the place where it happens, but it happens in the neighborhoods where we lay our head each and every night. So I'm joined today by 4 really cool people who are working in their neighborhoods all around this country to rebuild trust and support their community and just show up. That's how trust is built. So we're going to get to a time on this panel where it's participatory, so you can ask some questions. But first, I want to give a charge to you before we leave here today. So I want you to hear the stories that each of these 4 really cool panelists will share, and then I want you to go back and think about your role in rebuilding your community and helping to knit together the trust. You're in a broken relationship right now with your neighborhood, and how can you go home and solve the issues that you see plaguing your community? So joining me today, Ms. Erica Gonzalez from Baltimore, Maryland. Okay, okay, that's a participatory part. Good deal. S. Renee Mitchell, all the way from Portland, Oregon. James Encinas from Thornton, Colorado. And L.B. Prevette from Wilkesboro, North Carolina. So the first question, and I'll start with Erica, to each one of the panelists. Tell me a little bit about your work and what led you to become a weaver in your community.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Erica Gonzalez. We're a little loaded on this side. I'll try to address everyone. My name is Erica Gonzalez. I live in Baltimore, Maryland. And I'm originally from New York. My husband's from Washington, D.C. And when we wanted to buy our first home after graduating from college, Baltimore, we had our sights set on Baltimore. But not just anywhere in Baltimore, there was this little triangle, and we're like, we have to live in this triangle, because we knew everything that that triangle meant. If we were to place that triangle in New York or place that triangle in DC, I mean, it was accessible to everything, the highways, the schools, the subway, the zoo, you name it. I mean, this triangle was amazing. And we get to Baltimore, and we're talking to our realtor, and she was like, you don't want to live in that triangle. And then we were like, no, we really do want to live in this triangle. She says, you don't want to live in that triangle. What's wrong with the triangle, lady? Well, in this triangle, there's drug dealing, there are stolen vehicles, there is violence, it's a food desert. And we were coming in and we had 2 small children at the time, and our hearts were set on living in this triangle. Maybe we were a little crazy, but that was where we wanted to call home. And so we found a place that we said we wanted to live there. We bought our first home. And we've lived there. We had 3 children there. And at the time, what was this, a few years ago, our 5-year-old was in the car with me. And we took her to an elementary school in East Baltimore. We lived in West Baltimore. And this neighborhood that we took her to was beautiful. Her school, they had like string lights everywhere, and the lawns were all manicured, and you can tell there was just investment into this space. And my baby girl is staring out the window, and her eyes are wide, and she says, "Mommy, is this my world? It's so beautiful." And I'm looking at her, I'm like, "Yeah, baby, of course. What do you mean? Of course this is your world." She's like, "No, but it's so beautiful. Does this belong to me?" And it hit me. Like, my baby realized something, and she was attributing her external environment to something about her worth, right? And her value. And saying, does this world belong to me? Not, oh, of course you live in Baltimore. Of course this is a place you call home, but is it mine? Does it reflect the essence of who I am? And it wasn't hers. And I had to tell her, no, babe, we live in West Baltimore. We live in the triangle where people say we shouldn't be. We live in the food desert. We live where the houses are literally falling down on top of the residents. And that wasn't what we desired as a community. And we couldn't wait for somebody else to change that. Because at 5, my daughter needed to understand her value. At 5, at 4, at 3, at 2, at birth, my children needed to understand their worth. And so we got to work and we said, you know what, if no one else will create and fashion this environment to match the beauty of our residents, we will, the residents will, because we understand our value, we understand our worth, and finding it within ourselves to say, okay, we can fashion something here that better reflects us, that gives life to the space around us, that matches the life that we hold within us, so that my daughter can now say, "Mommy, is this my world?" She won't even have to ask the question. She knows it's her world because she's built it. She knows because it literally is modeled after her and what we believe of her. And so we've taken a 1-block radius. We've created a place called the Urban Oasis, and we've turned vacant spaces into community gardens and farm-to-table restaurants and theatrical stage areas, and the sky is the limit, because when you're growing life, I mean, what can hold it back? And so that's what I do for a living. I get to build a life and create a world.
Wow. Wow. Renee, what about you? Tell me what led you to become a weaver in your community, and tell me a little bit more about your work.
Well, I grew up with parents who always gave back to our community, so it was always kind of ingrained in me that that's something that I would do as well. The particular thing that I do now is I run a program called I Am More, which is an acronym for making ourselves resilient every day. I spent 25 years as a newspaper journalist, very successful in that career, but I wanted to find something else that spoke to my heart. Because most people, when they see me, make assumptions. But I grew up as a very shy, insecure young lady, and I didn't like to look people in the eye. But I always had a heart for making things better. And so after I left the newspaper, I was doing things in the schools, and I was running into young people who reminded me of myself when I was a young child, and just shy, insecure. And so I tried to do some things to help them reconnect with themselves. And so I wrote a book called The Awakening of Sharon, a shy and brown supergirl who finds her voice and becomes a superhero. And then I was recruited to come and teach journalism at a high school, which is the most diverse high school in Oregon, where I live, in Portland. And what I was seeing, being in those classrooms, teaching young people and seeing them every day, was a lot of them were experiencing a lot of trauma and not really feeling people saw them. They didn't connect with them. They didn't feel loved. And so I just started working a lot with the youth in addition to teaching classes. And so I would help, as a journalist, a former journalist, I would help young people with their scholarships. And one particular year, and this is a low-income high school, One particular year, there's a scholarship called Beat the Odds, where you had to write about your worst trauma and how you survived it. And so I was helping a lot of youth just write about their stories. And there were only 4 scholarships awarded in my city, in Portland, Oregon. And of those 4, 3 of them were my students. And all 3 of them were black girls. So this was significant because this had never happened in the school before, that so many of them would get this scholarship. And so I wanted to put a flag in the ground. So I created this program called I Am More. Within 6 months, these young people were opening up trauma-informed conferences in Philadelphia, where they were the only youth who were invited. They went to DC, they went to New York City. I learned from that experience that when you put youth in front of people who listen, adults, and you give them opportunity to be able to be proud of who they are and what their story is and what their potential is, it can be life-changing. And these young people started to really get in touch with their own potential through this program, I Am More. And so about a year after we started, we were able to create our own nonprofit. We recently got over $1.5 million from the city of Portland because they saw the good work that we were doing in our community. And so this year, we are going to be taking black youth to Ghana to reconnect them with their history, with the continent. And so I am doing, for the first time in my life, I'm doing work I love that comes from my heart, that I am able to see people who used to remind me of me, just not really feeling wanted, not really feeling loved or appreciated, blossom into these leaders, so they are now leading other youth to be able to blossom as well. So I come to this place from trauma, from not loving myself, from not feeling a sense of worthiness, to being able to help youth around me really understand their own worth. It's the best job in the world, and I love it every day.
I always get chills when I hear her tell the story about the work that she does because she's knitting together her neighborhood, which is knitting together these kids who are going to go together and knit together the world. And so what an amazing thing that you're doing. So, James, what about you? Tell me a little bit about the work you're doing and how did you become the weaver in your community?
So, to my mind, weaving means and requires being with. Not doing to or for, but being with. Being close to the people in your life, whether that be neighbors, friends, family, or whether that be a distant stranger, right? Being present with them. There's a wonderful indigenous Australian artist and activist who says, if you come to help me, you're wasting your time. But if your liberation is bound up in mine, then let's work together. So being present is really important to me. And it's important to me because there was a time in my life where someone who I needed to be with me wasn't. There was a time in my life where I really was struggling. And the person who could have helped me didn't. And that was my father. I was 26 years old, and we just, after many, many years of just constant violence and conflict and hatred, I just reached a breaking point in my relationship with my father. And it culminated in my putting a knife to my father's throat. And as I held him up against the headboard, I kept saying to him, why couldn't you love me? Over and over. Why couldn't you love me? And at some point, I stepped back, I dropped the knife, and I just wept. I remember as clear as it was today, there was a window in his bedroom, and a light came through that window, and it held me as I wept. And a couple of days later, I was at my mother's house, and on the bookshelf, I see M. Scott Peck's A Road Less Traveled. And I read in that book, you can't love anyone until you love yourself. And so it's been a long journey, and I've learned many things. But I think one of the most important things I've learned that my father wasn't the problem. I was. Yes, I was angry at him for not being able to be there for me, but I was not able to be there for anyone other than myself. And at some point, I decided to do right and to change that and to be somebody that could be with others, that could be present for them. And it didn't happen overnight. I mean, I didn't happen in my marriage. My wife left me after 17 years. It didn't happen initially as a father, as a parent. But over time, I got better and better at it. And to the point where when my father was at the end of his life, I was able to go and care for him. And I was able to love him in a way that I wished he had loved me when I was a child. And in doing that, I got to know him. There's a wonderful man, Brian Stevenson, who's a social justice leader and a lawyer, and he talks about getting proximate. I got close to my father. I got to see him. I got to be seen by him. I got to love him. And I got to be loved by him. And it changed me. It healed me and it transformed me. And I think it healed him and it transformed him. And at the end of his life, I actually had to go to Aspen for this Action Festival. And that night, I left him and I said to him, "What can I do for you, Dad?" And he said, "You can do a lot for me." And he died that night. So, in honoring him, I'm giving of myself to whoever wants me. Like to whoever I can help, whoever I can be present with, whoever I can love and be loved by, see and be seen by. And that's what Weavers do. These amazing individuals here on this panel with me. That's what they do. It's not about yourself. It's about giving of yourself. M. Scott Peck, again, said, "Love is not a feeling. Love is an activity, it's an intent." He has one of the best definitions I ever heard for love. Love is the will to extend oneself. Let me repeat that. Love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. That's what we're here for. And I've worked with a lot of different groups, but ultimately, it's about showing up. It's about seeing somebody who might need you to be present in their life and just showing up. And that's why I weave.
James, thank you. Thank you. As you all probably can already tell, that this work that these leaders are doing is deeply personal and relational. And then doing this work is healing for themselves at the same time. LB, tell me about you and the work you're doing in Wilkesboro, North Carolina.
Yeah, so I live in Wilkesboro, North Carolina. It's my hometown. It's in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. And so growing up, I was very fortunate to see people in community every day. Small farming areas don't make it without community. You need each other and you rely on each other. However, being a queer kid in that community, I was always on the outside looking in on it. I was never part of it. I never quite fit in. It was never a place that I could really, feel like I belong. And for me, that came to head eventually when I was 17 in a particularly violent attack where someone had left me out in the woods. And I ran away from my town because I was like, this isn't the place for me. I can't be here. I can't belong here. I'm going to go out west and, where all the gays go, right? And what I found out there was I was too country for the queers, is what I say. Like, somehow I still was more comfortable at a church potluck than a gay bar, And I was working out there with these queer youth, and I looked around the room one day, and there were more adults in that room than kids in the city. And I'm from a town that I'm guessing some of you in Cleveland feel the same way about based on our conversations before, where you're supposed to be embarrassed to be from here. All of the people I grew up with, when we leave, we're like, oh, and we laugh and make fun of our hometown, and joke about it. Smart kids are supposed to leave. Gay kids have to leave. Like, there's this narrative of one way out. And I looked around that room that day, and I just kept thinking, man, what would one adult have done in my life? What would seeing one person in this community have done for me? And I'm really inspired by Adrienne Marie Brown and her work around the idea of transformative justice. There is no going back and giving myself a better childhood. That's not going to happen for any of us. The hurts that have happened to us happened. They're factual and they exist. What we can do is prevent it from ever happening to another person. We can do the work of showing up so that no one else feels that hurt the same way. And when they do feel that hurt or they do suffer pain, they don't feel alone. And so in coming back to my hometown over the past 10 years, I have gathered folks over many a bonfire, many a potluck, anywhere I can get people together to hang out with me and love on them. And what I have found is a vibrant community, a vibrant, thriving community of queer folks and these stories that we don't tell about communities like ours because we want to perpetuate the narrative. And the more we say these communities don't exist, that folks like me don't live in Appalachia, that folks like me don't live in hometowns, the less likely folks like us are going to live in those areas. Like, we have to change the story and we have to get people together in this way. To where now it's this life I couldn't have dreamed of owning. I just opened this year my cocktail bar on Main Street in my hometown, named after that same event 15 years ago. That now it's come full circle to where I get to gather community and watch it flourish and thrive in this town. So the weaving for me has been trying to show up every day and be who I needed at 17 years old.
Yeah, you're not supposed to get emotional when you're on this panel, but I feel like I'm holding back tears up here because of these amazing stories, and I hope you all are taking notes as you think about the charge I offered to you earlier when we started the panel. So one question, and I'll let everybody jump in when they see fit. So what's one lesson you learned in your journey of weaving your community? Everybody talked about these amazing stories, but at the center of them was really love and healing and community. And so tell us about a lesson you learned along this journey. I'm gonna start calling on folks now. Go ahead, Erica.
So I had to really come to terms with the love that I really held for people, right? Because I wanted to do all of this work, and I shared the story about how it would impact my family. But I really had to come to terms with what I thought of my neighbors, what I thought of the people in my community. Could I do this for them, even if we didn't always see eye to eye? And that was really difficult at times because you don't always see eye to eye. And so would I continue the work if Miss whoever, Mr. So-and-so was, coming from a different perspective? And I had to come to terms with, yes, I could do it, not for a building, not for a street, not for a house, but for the people who would occupy it, for the people who would gather in this space. We have a problem in my community where people will literally take their trash and dump it out of their car window as they drive by and just leave it on the street, you know, while you're out there picking up the trash. So they're like, oh, there's trash pickup here? Here you go, lady. And they would do this. And you can get so angry sometimes with people, right? And how people respond to things, and they don't realize, like, don't you see the good we're doing? Don't you see that this is for you? And no, not everyone sees the good that you are doing, and you don't always see the good that others are doing, right? But you have to, I think, determine within yourself if you are still willing to do good for people who don't always see the good that you are trying to do. And then also understanding where they're coming from. Really quick, I'll just share, Fred. So we have this trail that's being considered for our community. So Baltimore City has this trail loop, and they're trying to connect the whole city, so you can go around on your bike or walk the whole thing if you want it all in one loop. And there's one final portion of the trail that needs to be completed, and that portion of the trail runs right through my community, and there is so much opposition in the community. They do not want this trail coming through. And you wonder, why wouldn't you want a trail to come through this community? There are so many health benefits, the beautification efforts that it would entail. I mean, it would be a wonderful thing for the community. And a lot of the residents are like, they're not doing this for us. They're not making this for us. We want to stay in our homes. This means gentrification is coming. All of the fears that come along with it, and these are trauma responses from things that have happened historically to the people of the community. And understanding these responses, understanding why, and not discarding what people and why people are feeling what they're feeling. And that could be a really difficult thing, especially when you feel, wow, look at all these health benefits. Look at what's good for you. Look at what's coming here. And addressing the trauma responses, and like LB had said, using that to build, using that to empower, to see, can we not make the same mistakes for the future? So I had to come to terms with that. What do I perceive of other people, and can I carry that well and listen to them while still moving forward in the good work that I hope to do?
Wow. Thank you. Tell me about a lesson you learned on this journey.
Trauma can be a door opener. And it also isn't always about you. The trauma sometimes that we experience, that person is expressing what is already inside of themselves, so we take it on and feel like we're bad people or we did something wrong. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I'm also a survivor of sexual assault. I'm a survivor of bullying. All of those things that I encountered created opportunity, a sensitivity within me to be able to create space for other people to not experience that or to heal from it. And through their healing, it has also helped heal me. So sometimes when we experience trauma, we get stuck in it. But what I've learned as a young person, as an adult, as a community person, if I could take that experience and make it work for someone else, then that is a healing for me. For example, being a survivor of domestic violence, I didn't know anything about that issue. But I recognize that there are women in our community who do not speak up about it. So I co-founded a domestic violence drop-in resource center. It was the first one in Portland, particularly for African and African-American women. I wrote a play about domestic violence, about sexual assault, that really helped people understand the issue and heal from it. So there are ways that we can use our creativity and our heart and our love to be able to help educate other people, to be able to heal other people. So don't just hold on to that trauma, right? Use it to fuel an opportunity to help your community, which in turn can help heal you.
LB?
I think the more I've been involved in community work, what shocked me so much is how scared people are, even the cool kids, right? Like, have you guys ever met someone and you're like, man, they're just really awesome. I want to be their friend. They're too cool, right? And you like turn away. And so I've started being like, Okay, just ask them. Like, if you don't ask them to hang out, you're definitely not gonna hang out, right? Like, at least try and fail. And everyone is craving it. Like, the people that I really looked up to and thought just had these like vibrant souls, and of course they probably are covered in friends, we'll start hanging out and they kind of break down over a while of like, I've just been really lonely. Like, if you feel lonely, everyone is so lonely, you guys. You are not the only one. We are all lonely, and we are all waiting for a friend to just welcome us in and ask us to hang out and do it. And so I put the onus on you of ask those people, do you want to grab a coffee? Do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to hang out? You will be shocked. I have never had someone say no, and I am not a cool person, right? Like, I was very much a bowl cut Hawaiian shirt kid, so like, it's people, yeah, like people are all just waiting for the invitation, and it is terrifying because nothing hurts quite as bad as rejection, you know, but people won't reject you, and it's shocking how much we have psyched ourselves out of connection and love and relationship out of the fear that they wouldn't want that. But if we don't try, we're definitely not going to have it.
I feel like you are the cool kid, though. So you are the cool kid.
I agree.
So yeah. James.
I think you're cool too, JP.
James, tell us about the lesson you've learned.
So I'm part of this group of education leaders who are self-identified Christians, and we're trying to figure out how to bring faith into our schools and the tools of our faith and to enhance the life of the children that we work with. And recently we got together, and one of us invitees said, "I don't know why I'm even here. You people, us Christians, don't even want me here." It was really hard to hear that. I'm glad he spoke his truth. He's a member of the LGBTQ community, and obviously there's been a history of the church and people who identify as gay not being wanted, not being accepted. And so we try to support him in that space and tell him he has as much right as anyone else to be there. And but I left that morning of that gathering. We gathered for 3 days, and I just really was struggling with that. I felt like we hadn't resolved it. And that evening we had planned this ritual that we invited everyone to. And for those of you who aren't Christian, Jesus Christ at the Last Supper washed the apostles' feet. And so we were going to do this foot washing. And he did it because it was a sign of humility, right? It was a sign of his love for these individuals that he journeyed with. And so we had everything set up for the foot washing, and this individual who said, "I don't even know why I'm here," got up and knelt in front of the chairs, ready to wash. I still get emotional, like ready to wash someone's feet, ready to wash the feet of somebody that might not even want him there. It was a courageous act. It was also a humble act. And before you knew it, people are getting up and getting into that chair, having their feet washed by him. And then other people are getting up and standing behind him and putting their hands on him. And it was just this amazing, beautiful thing to witness, the love that came into that space. And I guess what I learned is you got to kind of just give yourself to the mystery. There are 5 hard truths that I was taught as a minister, which is life is hard, you're not that important, it's not all about you, you have no control, and you're going to die. It might not be a good thing to tell college students at this point in their life, but you got to trust. Beyond your mind, you got to trust your heart. It's what he did, right? Is he said, "You're not going to decide for me. who I can worship or who I can follow or who I can believe in. And he did it out of his heart. And it changed everything. It changed the relationship between all these education leaders and each other, right? It made us love him even more. And now he loves us back. So I think there's like, as we get into these spaces and we have these conversations, for me, I don't know where these conversations go, but I know that if the heart is part of this thing, then magical things happen. Like magical things happen. Bring your heart into the space. Have your heart inform your mind. And so I think that's like, it's hard to do, especially for people that are, intellectuals that go into these spaces of education and leadership, but our hearts are powerful. They're powerful conduits of change. And that's something I learned.
When I was a kid, after messages like that, the pastor would say the doors of the church are now open. So thank you, James. So I'm wondering, does any of you have any questions you might want to, anything burning you might want to ask to any of the panelists here? There are microphones on both ends of the stage. But if you do, you can come on up. But I'll ask another question of each person here in 60 seconds or less. I know since I started with Weave 3 years ago, I've learned a lot of things about myself. And one of them was something you just said, James, that this work isn't about me and I'm not that important, right? My mother thinks I am, but I had to kind of dive to that myself. But what have you learned about yourself on this journey that you've been on while you're doing this work, Weave, in your community? So 60 seconds or less. What have you learned about yourself? We'll start with James and we'll come back around.
What have I learned about myself? That I need people. That I need people to be fully who I am. I think we're relational beings. We need each other, and we gotta get this figured out, because I don't know if we're gonna survive if we don't figure it out.
Wow.
I've learned to trust my intuition. It wasn't something I was taught about. I think that when we follow what our heart tells us to do, where our heart leads us, we'll always be going in the right direction. And sometimes you got to get out of your head and into your heart space, and trust that where you're being led is the right place to be. And that's what I've learned throughout my life.
I'm learning my capacity. I have a really hard time saying no to things or feeling like, oh, I can take on the whole world. And I'm learning that it's okay to set a limit for myself and to balance my life and to let that suffice. And that's been a learning process. I won't say that I've learned it. I'm learning this.
Learning. It's not like you're in the same car.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Sort of. But yeah.
For me, especially since meeting the Weave team, because I'm very informal, I just hang out in my community a lot, but that I'm a competent person, that I can do this, I think that self-deprecating mentality, where you think it doesn't matter, you don't care, and then folks come from the outside and they are like, you're doing what? And it really affirms you. So I'm constantly starting to take myself seriously, where I would always say I've just been stumbling forward over the years, but you got to at least be walking the right path for to fall forward. And so just kind of learning that I'm capable too.
Wow. Shockingly enough, at one point I was a bright 20-something-year-old college student. Now I'm a bright 40-something-year-old bureaucrat, I guess, right? But I think about when I was your age, right, bright and beautiful, who I would be now if I would have had one of these folks in my life kind of coaching me through. You know, life is this weird, precarious thing where you're kind of like navigating through a dark maze, and the only way you get to the end if somebody is clapping you through. And so these four folks who are joining me here are like the clappers. And what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self, or these 20-something-year-olds, or some plus 20s out here about how to create a meaningful life? Because you all seems like you're bringing your full self to the work that you do. It's deeply emotional and impactful and meaningful. So what would you say to them? What would you say to these 20-something-year-olds? Anybody just jump in.
I would definitely say, this is a lesson I learned, I would definitely say enjoy the journey. When I was 20, I had made, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to major in journalism. I wanted to get a full ride scholarship to college because my teacher told me I was not college material. And now I have my doctorate degree, by the way. But I always had this mindset, I'm going to get to the next thing, I'm going to get to the next thing, I'm going to get to the next thing. And I never really enjoyed being where I was. And so as you're going through life trying to meet your goals, make sure that you stay enough in the present moment that you're actually enjoying what you're doing and enjoying your life and having fun. That's something I wish someone would have told me, because it wasn't until much later where I actually started to have fun, because I felt like I had to keep accomplishing, do this, go there, move there. And so enjoy the journey is what I would advise all of you, including those who are over 20.
That's good advice. Thank you.
Can I say?
Yes.
I just think that the question itself is strange for me. Yeah, how do you create...
Being 20-something?
That too, man, that's so hard. But how do you create a meaningful life? It seems strange to me because I believe that life in itself is meaningful. Your very presence, the substance of who you are, your very essence is meaningful. You always have been. You always will be. I was telling Dylan earlier, that never before has there been a you, and never again will there ever be. Somebody with your exact experience, somebody who has lived the life you've lived, walked the shoes, walked the path you've walked. And so your presence means something. Your absence means something. And I'm very thankful for the individual yous that are in this space and all that you have to offer for this space you occupy and this time you live in and these moments that you will make because you are here. And so your life is very meaningful, and if nobody has told you that, remember that I'm telling you that today. I'm very thankful for the beauty that is you.
I think, if I could go back and talk to my younger self, I would just say, give a damn. You know what I mean? And do it unabashedly. If you, whatever it is you love it proudly and fully and thoroughly, and don't let anybody tell you you can't for whatever reason. For me, it was my town and my mountains and my rural farm community that I love so much, and I let other people tell me it wasn't mine. It is mine. They would say, this isn't a place where queer people live. How? I'm here. This isn't a queer town. How could it not be? I helped make it. It's my home, and I will love it as proudly and as confidently and as loudly as anybody else. So just give a damn and give it wide open when you show up to do it, and don't let anyone talk you back from it.
Wow.
I love poetry. And one of my favorite poets is Raina Maria Rilke. And for you young people, if you haven't read his book, Letters to a Young Poet, I would highly recommend that book. And in it, he has a conversation with a young man who wants to be a poet. And that young man has a lot of questions. And Rilke says to him, live the question. Live the question. And someday in the future, you might run into the answer. When you get to my age, at 65, I've had a lot of questions, and now I have some answers to those questions, right? So be patient with yourself and live the question. And I'm going to leave you with a question, and not just for the young, but those of us who are a little bit older. It's Mary Oliver at the end of a beautiful poem that she writes called Summer Day. She says, "Tell me, what are you going to do with that wild and precious life?" Let me say that again. What are you going to do with that wild and precious life? Sit with that question. And then do something.
Well, as I still noodle around what I'm going to do with this wild and precious life of mine, I want to say, if you've read a paper, you know that the issues that our world is facing right now are vast, but I believe the solutions live right here today, in this audience, on this stage. And if there are issues plaguing your neighborhood, I would just implore you to be the change that you want to see, because each one of the folks who've joined me on this panel have done that in their particular community. So join me right now in a round of applause for Ms. Erica Gonzalez, S. Renee Mitchell, Mr. James Encinas, and L.B. Prevet. Thank you so much for joining us today. Listen, really quick, there is a online survey, and I think you can use, yes, that thing right there. What do you call that thing? A QR code. I'm getting old, see? A QR code. I want you to do it now, or I'm going to sing for a little bit. So pull out your phones, because you all have them. I've seen some of you texting while you were here. Pull them out. Pull them out. That's right. Let's do this survey right now while we're here. Or you can go to, unless you have one of those flip phones, which my dad still uses, you can go to try-c-edu/weave survey. And I'm going to wait just for a little bit. Any selection you'd like for me to sing while you all do this?
Celine Dion.
Absolutely not. I'll go on to the next bullet. If you want to learn more about our work that we do at Weave, you can go to weavers.org. On our site, you'll find our Weaver Network, which gives you access to thousands of opportunities to get involved in your community around the country. It'll give you information on our Weave Speaker Bureau, this is our first Weave Speaker Bureau activity. I think we did an okay job. Yeah, you can clap to that. Information in our skill center, as well as our online community, so you can be connected to people like you around the country who care about their community, and Weaver Awards and a host of other things. You can also sign up for our newsletter. Michael put a whole lot of notes in here. So there's a lot you can learn if you go to our site, weavers.org. Dean Jordan, I think there's something else we're doing. Am I correct? Should I sing while you grab the microphone? Because I can do that.
I got it.
Oh, too late.
Thanks. So first, can I say thanks one more time to the Weavers who are here. You all were phenomenal. Thank you. And thank you, Frederick, in particular. Very, very grateful. I also want to acknowledge everybody who's here tonight. Thank you for being here. And a lot of effort went into this evening's program. Many people involved in various capacities. I do want to call special attention to three people in particular. We have Michael Scholar of the Aspen Institute and the Weave Project. Also, his colleague, Maria Soroka. Maria, I'm not sure if I said your last name correctly, but here's Maria. And our own Summer Paris here at the Mandel Humanities Center. Where's Summer? There's Summer. Thank you all so much for all of the effort you've put in. Don't forget, for our community members who are here, there are desserts available. Hope you'll stick around and chat a little bit, maybe process some of what you heard this evening, some of the things you heard from our Weavers that you'll hope to take into your own communities. There will be a video of this event available, as I mentioned at the outset, that should be on our website next week. So check www.try-c.edu/Mandel for more information on that. And again, the Mandel Scholars, if you're a student in the Mandel Scholars Academy, please skip the dessert table for now. We've got dinner for you upstairs. Just head up to room 240, and we'll eat, and we'll talk some more about tonight's program, and hopefully have some really valuable conversations. So again, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. We're so glad you're here with us.
Before you send everybody upstairs, can we, just a personal point of privilege, I would love to take a photo with everybody.
Oh my goodness, yes, I was supposed to do that.
It
wasn't on my notes.
One of the things we did last year. Can we do that, please?
Absolutely. Could we get... Any thoughts on the best way to do this real quick? Last year we had the Mandel Scholars stand in front of the stage, as I recall, but we've got our friends from the community. We want to leave you all out. Michael, what's your plan? In front or on the stage? Yes to both? Everybody come this way. Let's get a group photo. We're just going to make this work. This is your first active weaving event. Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate you being here. Have a great night. Again, Mandel Scholars, head upstairs. Let's stay with